What's up, everyone? Today I have some fun quarter note triplet exercises for you. We are going to play patterns between the snare drum and the bass drum at a quarter note triplet rate underneath a swing pattern between the ride cymbal and hi-hats. Quarter note triplets entail playing 3 hits evenly over the space of 2 beats. So if I play quarter notes on the ride cymbal and quarter note triplets with my left hand on the snare drum, there's this sort of ratio where there will be 3 hits on the snare drum for every 2 hits on the ride cymbal. So I'll get the swing pattern going between my ride cymbal and hi-hats. I'm going to step on the hi-hat pedal on beats 2 and 4, and then on the ride cymbal, it's just our classic ding, ding, da ding, ding, da ding. So I'll set that up for a couple of measures, and then I'll start playing quarter note triplets on the snare drum. We get this really nice lacing effect between the snare and the rhythm played on the ride cymbal. That sounds like this. So the way that quarter note triplet rhythm on the snare drum fits against the swing pattern on the ride cymbal, we have the snare drum beginning on beat 1, and then we have it playing again at the last triplet partial of beat 1, and then again on the second triplet partial of beat 2, or the middle triplet partial of beat 2, and then that same pattern begins again from beat 3. So then the snare will be on beat 3, the last triplet partial of beat 3, and then the middle triplet partial of beat 4. 6 strokes evenly spaced over 4 beats, or reduced to 3 strokes spaced evenly over 2 beats. That's the rhythmic framework for all the exercises we're about to work through. Everything will land on the quarter note triplet grid. It's also a good idea to practice playing quarter note triplets on the bass drum against the swing cymbal pattern, since we will be implementing the bass drum as well. So if we use the bass drum as quarter note triplets against the swing, that sounds like this. Now, I'm trying to play the snare drum and the bass drum relatively quietly. We want the kick and snare to sit beneath the cymbals dynamically. It also makes these exercises just more challenging. It's really tricky to play the drums quietly while you still maintain a good level of intensity on the cymbals. The first exercise is simply alternating between the snare and bass drum at the quarter note triplet rate. So without the cymbals, the snare and kick should just sound like... But when we get the cymbal pattern back on top, your ears are going to start to get pulled in 2 different directions. You'll be able to hear the swing pattern as its own thing, but then you also hear the kick and snare as its own thing, competing for the same space. It's kind of like the sound equivalent of ramming a square peg through a round hole. But this first exercise altogether sounds like this. The second exercise is doubles split between the snare and the kick. So we'll have 2 hits on the snare drum followed by 2 hits on the bass drum at a quarter note triplet rate. Now the snare and kick pattern here has 4 parts, so it's going to take 2 full measures before the snare drum lines up again on beat 1. So it takes 2 measures for the snare and kick pattern to cycle around once. So the snare and kick alone will just sound like... But when it's played with the cymbal pattern, we end up with... This third exercise will also take 2 measures to cycle around once, and instead of doing 2 on the snare and 2 on the kick, we're going to do 3 hits on the snare and 1 hit on the kick. So snare and kick alone will sound like... And with the cymbal pattern, exercise 3 sounds like this. Exercise 4 consists of single paradiddles split between the snare drum and the bass drum. So if I take just the snare and kick on their own, we have... For our purposes here, I think of this pattern as containing 8 parts. I'm kind of thinking of both of the paradiddles as one long pattern. Snare, kick, snare, snare, kick, snare, kick, kick. So it's going to take 4 measures for this thing to cycle around once. That being said, I think that there are 2 distinct halves to this. So the first measure, of course, begins on the snare drum, but the third measure, the halfway point, the whole thing turns around, so the bass drum seems like it's in the lead. So beginning at the third measure, we have kick, snare, kick, kick, snare, kick, snare, snare, kick, snare, kick, kick, and then that evenly fills measures 3 and 4, puts us back to the beginning of the cycle. Kind of disorienting, right? But I only played 2 cycles of the pattern there. It's just a pretty long phrase. It's pretty easy to get lost in the middle there. When you're comfortable with these exercises individually, string them together in a big ol' sequence. So I'm going to play each exercise for 4 measures. So for the first exercise, it resolves in the space of a single measure. I basically just cycle it 4 times. The second exercise, the doubles, snare, snare, kick, kick, takes 2 measures to resolve. So I'm going to play that cycle 2 times. Same thing with exercise 3, snare, 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 kick. That will cycle around twice. And then the paradiddles, exercise 4. We're only going to play through that cycle once, since it takes 4 measures to resolve. And then after you get to the end of the paradiddles, go backwards. So you'll go from exercise 4 to exercise 3 to exercise 2 to exercise 1. And then you could loop that as many times as you'd like. And all together, it sounds like this. Let's get a metronome going too. There you have it, some otherwise very basic snare and kick patterns, but placed into a context that makes everything a little trippy. If you like what you saw in this video, check out my Patreon page. You'll have access to transcriptions for this video, as well as transcriptions for all my other lesson videos, and follow me on Instagram @DrumMerhar to see more videos of my playing. On a more serious note, this is likely the last video I'll be uploading for at least a while. I have some big changes happening in my life. I'm beginning to take steps away from pursuing music professionally, and that feels kind of wild to say, but I need a change of pace in my life. I'm excited to learn some new things, and I just need some space. I'm still going to be playing. I'm not quitting my bands or anything. I actually have a tour in a couple of weeks, which is really exciting. Going to be playing just 6 dates with my band Clam up around the New England and Mid-Atlantic regions. But I'm at a point in my life where I can't continue to pursue this as my primary source of income. There are other things that I want to be able to do in my life and other things that I want to be able to fund in my life. I'm kind of burnt out on doing all this music stuff as much as I love it. But I need some space. So give me some time. I'll very periodically upload things, I imagine, but it's not going to be at any sort of consistent schedule. If you are a subscriber on my YouTube channel, or if you've been a contributor on my Patreon page, thank you so much for your support. I infinitely appreciate it. You all really don't know how much it means to me to have had any sort of audience over the years. I hope these videos have been valuable in some capacity and have inspired you and made you want to play or try something new. This isn't goodbye forever. Hit me up on Instagram. I'll still be pretty responsive, but I will not be as regularly active on the YouTubes anymore. I just need some time and space, but I'll be back at some point. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.